Okay, so good morning to you all. We're going to continue on with exercise 124. I will apologize in advance if my voice gives out on me. I've been struggling a bit with it, so it may disappear, in which case you guys are out of luck for me saying anything, but it also may work itself out. So it is what it is. We're going to give it a shot and see. Luckily, you're in my first class, not my second. So we're going to work today on exercise 124, which is post-processing an AutoCAD file and trying to make it more attractive than just a standard AutoCAD file. I will kind of do a hybrid of a very traditional approach along with a few kind of bizarre things that you may want to do. The truth is when you get to this stage of post-processing, what you're going to do for, say, an office is going to be entirely different than what you're going to do for a presentation set of drawings for a studio. And so there is some overlap and some similarities, but for the most part, you're going to do it slightly differently. I'm going to show you information about putting a title block in, putting little notes in, and kind of the things that an office would require you to do. And then I'm also going to show you kind of collage techniques and how you might enhance the overall image to make it a little bit more presentation-oriented. So recognize in advance that what I'm teaching you is kind of two sides of the coin. We're going to combine them into one document, and that document is what you'll end up using for your assignment 105 that you're going to turn in, which is supposed to be kind of this hybrid. But I want you to be clear early that it is a hybrid, and generally you're going to do a little bit more of one and a little less of the other, depending on what your intended outcome is for this particular thing. The other thing is, one of the requirements for assignment 105 is that you will actually plot a physical print of this. I will be grading the online version as I always do, but I want you to have the experience of plotting here so that you're prepared for future classes. One of the reasons that 135 has started to be a prerequisite for other classes is so that I cover certain milestones so that you don't have questions later on. And one of those is the ability to plot. So a little bit later today, Chuck's going to come in and give his talk about plotting here at DVC. I'll let him do that. I'll probably chime in with a few tidbits of my own, but it's gotten to the point where it's relatively easy. You'll probably be plotting off a roll, not a custom sheet of paper, so it should be kind of like printing, except it's bigger format. But I do want you to be aware that that's going to happen. He's going to come in sometime today before 11. I don't know exactly when, so stick around. Don't vanish into the ether because I want you to have that discussion. So today, like I said, we're going to be doing the post-processing of an AutoCAD file. There are a variety of ways of kind of working through the post-processing part of AutoCAD. There are also a variety of software packages that you may or may not choose to do, and there are also things that you might do in AutoCAD, but you might do in Illustrator. So you have to kind of work through your own workflow for how comfortable you are in various programs, and therefore what do you do in one program versus another. They all kind of overlap. So the three kind of big ones are AutoCAD, what you're doing in AutoCAD. The next one is Illustrator, and what you're doing in Illustrator. And the last one might be InDesign, where you're assembling a packet. And it kind of varies a little bit based on whether you have a multi-page document or you have one sheet. Today we're doing one sheet, so we're going to concentrate in the world of Illustrator. So I have AutoCAD open on my screen here, and I have my layout set up here where I have each of my elevations established, and I have my floor plan. I did add an extra little contour line because I felt like I wasn't getting enough of the contours. So mine would be every 6 inches instead of every 12 inches. They were arbitrary, but I'm trying to make it look a little bit better. I could take it a step further and add one more set in, and maybe I'll do that for the sake of argument here. You can see that I put a couple in. I used the spline tool to do this, and I just kind of, let me turn off ortho here, and I just kind of added in another contour set in between the existing contour sets. So let me go ahead and do one here, just to add a little bit more interest to the final drawing. Do one here. We'll do one here. So this would mean my contours were every 3 inches instead. Let me go ahead and trim out the pieces that I'm overlapping here. Take this, this. I'm concentrating on the outside walls because I'm going to end up trimming off the inside pieces, so I'm only selecting those outside walls here. That's there. Let's see. Let's take this one and that one and that one. All right, and then I'll type trim or go up to modify and then trim. I'm going to get rid of that piece. Get rid of that piece. Oh, I'm missing a piece there. There. Those are okay. Get rid of that. I'll get rid of that. And I had one more piece in this corner that I have to get rid of, so we'll take those two pieces and trim and remove that as well. And so I just added a couple more. It'll help with the overall look. I do want to make sure that they're on the same layer, so I'm going to select all of these pieces and make sure that they are on the topography layer. So I'll switch to the topography layer, which they now are. And then I can go back to my layout view, and we can see that I have a bunch more of the topo lines. Kind of makes it look a little bit nicer. But again, it's a whatever feels right to you. I did make the lines this kind of dashed look. It's a phantom line, technically, just so that they're a little bit different than the other lines that I used. I assigned a hidden line to the door. I did find that the scale was a little bit too large. And so if I go into my line types, which if I type line type, L type, it'll bring up the line type manager. There's my two custom lines, the hidden 2 and the phantom 2. But I adjusted the global scale factor to 0.5 so that they were a little bit tighter. If they were at 1.0, I said, OK, you can see that the lines are bigger here when I see the preview. I want them to be a little bit smaller. So I'll go back to L type, and we'll change them to a global scale factor of 0.5. I'll say OK, and the lines get a little bit smaller. It just looks a little bit better to have a little bit smaller lines. So I should have reasonably good line weights already established in my drawing. If I was unhappy with the line weights, I'd go in and adjust them. That should be trimmed off. Hold on a second. Sometimes you discover things that should go away. There we go. So I'm reasonably happy with my line weight. So I'm going to go ahead and do a print of this. So I'll go to File and then Plot. Or I can click the little printer icon here. Remember, since I already set it up in my layout, I really don't need to change any settings. It's just a matter of saying OK. So I'll go ahead and say OK. And I have to choose where to save it. So let's go ahead and save it onto my flash drive into a folder for today. We hope. Maybe not. That one more time. Well, it doesn't want to make a new folder for me. We'll save it into the 123. Right, so this is the Assignment 105 Floor Plan Layout 1. I'll go ahead and click on Save. And yes, I can overwrite it because I've done it more than once. And it then will show up, computer here, under my flash drive as a PDF, which we can look at. It's this layout 1 right there. And for whatever reason, it was opening in Illustrator. If I open it in Acrobat, which is what it should open in, right, I'll get a sense of what this looks like. We can zoom in a bit, hopefully. My computer's being so helpful today. Right, and so we can see that I have line weights established. So my dashed lines are a little bit thinner. I have thicker walls. You know, in reality, maybe I need to make those walls a little bit thicker. We may have to go through and make some tweaks in the process. I can either do that in AutoCAD or I can do it in Illustrator after the fact. So I have a lot of flexibility there. So I'm going to go ahead and close this for now. And I'm going to open this floor plan layout in Illustrator. And so I can right-click on it and say Open with Adobe Illustrator. Or if that's not an option, I can open Illustrator first, which I've already done here, and go to File, Open, and then I can open it from there, right here, and say Open. All right, so when it comes out, it looks like this. And so it's reoriented the page so that it's in portrait mode with everything twisted. I want to see it in landscape mode because that's how I'm going to be working. So the first thing that I need to do is adjust that in Illustrator. And so I'm going to do that using something called the artboard. And if we come down here on the tools on the left side, there's something that looks like a rectangle with little dashes coming off of it. Sorry, my head's always in the way. It's right there. It's called the artboard tool. I'm going to click on the artboard tool. And at the top, in this top ribbon, I have the ability to switch from portrait to landscape. So I'll go ahead and click on landscape. And it will switch my drawing so that it's in landscape mode. Okay? Notice that my drawing itself, my lines, didn't change. So I need to adjust those as well. So once I'm done, I can click on the black arrow here, the regular selection tool. And then I can select all of my objects. It's right there. I can go to the free transform tool. And you see it when I move close to this, I get a little arcing double arrow. If I click and drag, I can then rotate this view. I'm going to hold down Shift so that it'll jump to 90 degrees, which it does. And now I have it placed on a 24 by 36 sheet. Okay. Unfortunately, I wish it just came in landscape, but it's just the way that AutoCAD writes the PDFs. It's going to come in like this. So now that I have it corrected, it's a matter of starting to make some adjustments to it. And I'm going to start with some of the very, let's see, should I do it? Yeah, we'll do it in the order where we deal with textures first. The same order as your handout. So I've moved on, and I'm at part 1. I have my PDF, and now I can look at my PDF, and I can say, are the line weights appropriate in size? Right? Are there any mistakes in the line weights that I really need to adjust? You know, they seem reasonable. There's some that are darker than others, which is what I wanted. In reality, I should adjust a few to make them a little bit lighter, probably. Right? If I look at my elevation view, it looks reasonable. Right? I have lighter interior frames than exterior frames. Right? That looks okay. Maybe the borders need to be adjusted. Right? So if I wanted to adjust the line weight, right, I could come in here. If I double click, I'll go into isolation mode so that I can get into one of these views, which are all separate right now. And I could, for example, select all the pieces of this window like this. And then I could adjust the line weight of those. Right now they're at what's 0 point, but I could make them, say, fatter, and they'd show up a little bit fatter. It's a very subtle change. Right, we'll put them at 0.5 point, something like that. So it's kind of up to you if you want to go through. To me, if I was going to adjust line weights, I tend to do it in AutoCAD because I think it's faster to just do it by layer and apply the line weights there and re-export. But it's kind of up to you as to what feels right in terms of how you do it. I'm going to back up here for a second and change those back. Oops. And I'll press Control-0. Okay? So now I've dealt with that. Now, the next piece of this that would be really nice would be to add some kind of collage texture behind maybe some concrete or whatever to make these elevations look a little bit better, maybe make the floor plan look a little bit better. So again, this is on the artistic side of what you might be doing versus the technical side, which we'll do a little bit later under part 3, which I'm noticing right now, apparently I go from part 1 to part 3 and then 4 and then 5. So there is no part 2 on the handout. Sorry about that. Sometimes it happens, right? Okay, so we're going to deal with part 3, adding colors and textures right now. And so the first thing that I want to do is I want to look at my layer structure. And unfortunately, when it comes out in AutoCAD as a PDF, it loses some of the layer structures, but it does keep each of the views together under what's called a clip group. So if I look at layer 1, which is my primary layer, and I click on the little triangle next to it, it expands the layer, and you can see that I have 5 clip groups, each of those corresponding to one of the views that's in my drawing. Okay? I want to separate those clip groups out so that they're each on separate layers. So I'm going to restructure this a bit using this layers window. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll create a new layer. And I'm going to rename this plan. And then I want this object, right, which happens to be this clip group here, to end up on the plan layer. So I'll take this clip group, making sure nothing's selected. I'll take this clip group, and I'm just going to drag it up to the plan layer. And now that's on the plan layer. Okay? Let me go ahead and add an elevation layer. And we'll call this S elevation for south elevation. And I can see what clip group it is because when I select it, I get this little blue icon next to which clip group it is. So I'm going to drag that clip group up onto the south elevation layer. And now that's on its own layer. And I can turn these off so that I can see what's left. Okay? So we'll move on and we'll do a north elevation. So we'll call this, and I'm going to move this one onto the north elevation layer, this clip group. And then I can turn it off. One more, and we'll go with east elevation. I have to think it would be this view here, would be the east, which is that one. We'll put it on the east elevation layer. And then finally, this is the west elevation. So we'll add one more layer here, and we'll call this west elevation. And I'll move that clip group onto the west elevation layer. And then layer 1 is now empty, so I can get rid of layer 1 altogether. So now I have it nicely organized, plan, and then each of my elevation views. Inside of those, I still have a clip group that's associated with each of these layers. I want to get rid of those clip groups. So this is a relatively easy process. If I select one of the groups here, and then I right-click and say Release Clipping Mask, right? The clip group should go away for the east elevation. So I'm going to do that for each one. I'm going to right-click and say Release Clipping Mask. I'm going to right-click and say Release Clipping Mask. Right-click, Release Clipping Mask. One more time here. Right-click, Release Clipping Mask. All right, so now I have these each as separate views without the clipping masks so that I can start to work with it. So I'm going to start and concentrate on this south elevation as my demonstration. Right? You'll do at least one today. If you want to work on more of them, all the better. So let me go ahead and zoom in on this south elevation. So there's my south elevation. I'm going to turn off everything but the south elevation layer so that I have just the south elevation layer showing. Okay? So what I'm going to do is outlined in Illustrator 3.6, which is how to do a live paint. And I just realized this morning that I'm missing some of the images. I'll fix those after lecture so that those images come back. I don't know why the links broke. But that's what I'm going to be working on today, is this 3.6. So let me go ahead and jump back to Illustrator. And the first thing when I do a live paint is I want to perform the live paint on a duplicate of the layer. So it's always a good practice to have duplicate layers when you're messing with the layers so that if you screw it up, you can go back to your first layer. So with this layer selected, I'll go to my little flyout menu and say Duplicate South Elevation. And so I have South Elevation Copy. I want to make sure that it's below the regular South Elevation layer. And then I'll also turn off the regular South Elevation layer so that all I have is just the copy that I'm working with. Okay? So now that I have the copy here that I'm working on, I'm going to go ahead and select my objects. So I'll drag a box around them. And we can see them all selected here. And I'm going to click on a tool that's underneath the Shape Builder tool called the Live Paint Bucket tool. Okay? It looks like in Photoshop, you guys remember the paint bucket? Right? It looks like the paint bucket, but it has a couple other little icons next to it. And what the Live Paint Bucket tool does is it will allow me to create filled regions within this line drawing. Okay? When I move my mouse over the selected objects, you see that I get a little cursor that comes up that says click to make a live paint group. So when I click on this object, it's going to make it a live paint group, and it's going to allow me to fill in certain regions. And so you can see that I can move through and I can fill in any one of these, kind of like the paint bucket would do in Photoshop. When I do this, I tend to like to pick bright colors so that I can easily see what I'm doing. And sometimes it will only do grayscale unless I switch to an RGB color. I have no idea why that happens, but it's up here under the Color tab, under the flyout. You can select RGB instead of grayscale. I don't know why it happens, but sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes it's not. So what I can do is I can fill in regions. So now that's filled in red. And I tend to go through and change the colored regions by where they are in the elevation. Right? So let's go ahead and switch. We'll do one in green, which would be here. And then let's switch the color again. Actually, that's pretty close to this color. Let's pick blue. I'll pick that section. And let's pick purple, and I'll do this section. And so you can see how it's filling in certain regions of my drawing. And so I could take it a step further, and I could fill in the individual window panes, for example. Let's do a light blue for that. I could fill these in. And it's kind of up to you as to what you want to do with these. And I'll show you a variety of examples. So it's just a matter of clicking in the regions. All right, so those are windows. I could switch and select the window frames too. I would have to zoom in a little bit. And the reason that I change colors each time is I can use a trick where I select by color to select all of the objects of a particular color. All right, so I've covered most things. I don't have the stairs covered. So just in case I decide I want to do those, let's do one other color. There, there, and there. Okay, so I have all of those colored in. Now let me zoom in a little bit. Sorry about that. And when I'm done, up here in the top ribbon, I have a button called Expand. And when I click on that Expand button, it will actually make separate objects of each of these colored regions that I created. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Expand. And now I can select any one of these objects as its own entity. So you can see it's its own object now that I can work with. And so now I can go ahead and fill any one of these objects with a particular color or texture, etc. And so I'm going to show you a variety of techniques. We'll start with the simplest one, which would be to load a swatch and fill it with a swatch. So let me go ahead and go to the Digital Tools website, and I'm going to download under Swatches. I'm going to go ahead and download the Prismacolor warm gray colors, or maybe I'll use these architectural markers. Why not? And let me go ahead and download these. And I want to save them on my flash drive somewhere. Sorry. Resources. I really should have something called Swatches here. And I'll go ahead and paste that in here. Okay, so then I'll go back to Illustrator, and I'm going to load those swatches. And we did this before by going to the Swatches panel, clicking on the little flyout menu, and saying Open Swatch Library, Other Library, and then navigating to those that I just saved. There we go. And I can say Open, and now I have all of those available. So I can pick an object, and I can apply the swatch to it. Right? I'll pick, let's do this one, maybe a little bit darker. Right? This one, a little bit lighter. And so I can apply these. Let's take these. And again, I'm using the white arrow, the direct select tool, to apply the various colors. All right, so let's do this. There's that. Now I told you I would select sometimes by color region. So let me go ahead and select. Right, see this color that's in here, that's the frame of these windows. I'll select one of these, and then I'll go up to the Select menu and say Select Same Fill Color, and it will select all the objects with that fill color. So it makes it much easier to find it. And let's put some kind of a wood type color on those. And then let's take all of the windows here, and I don't have a good color for those, but we'll leave them as blue for right now, and I'll work on them in a second here. Let me zoom out. So I've added a little bit of color to the background here. Now, I'd like these textures right, to exist without all of the lines. And so if I select these objects, I can put them on their own layer. So we'll add a new layer, and we'll call this South Elevation Textures. And I'll take each of these and again, I'm holding down Shift to do this. And I can put them on the South Elevation Textures layer. So they're there. And then I can turn back on my original South Elevation on top of it, and you can see that I have a little bit of a background texture assigned to the line drawing. Right? So it's a subtle way of kind of enhancing the drawing itself. I know it's hard for you guys to see because these colors aren't very dark. Let me see if I can make these a little bit better here. You can see that better. Probably too dark. Right? Something like this, maybe you can see a little bit better. The point is that I can adjust these to be whatever color I want, and I'm using these swatches. I could make up my own swatches. I could make them in shades of gray. Perhaps I should have downloaded the Prismacolor warm gray markers. And go back here. Maybe I need the warm gray. Let me copy these and put them on my flash drive. All right, then I can load those up. Same way. Go to Swatches here. Open Swatch Library, Other Library. Warm gray. And perhaps this will work a little bit better. So let's take this and we'll assign it that gray, that, and we'll assign it that gray. All right, let's take this and assign it this gray. This is a little bit lighter there. This should be that gray. And this one, oops. This one needs to be that gray. Right, so the point being that I can apply these so that we can kind of see the color regions and we get this colorized texture. So this is the most simple way of enhancing the elevation. Right, so we have a little bit to that. I can take it one step further because these are very stark colors right now, and I could put a grunge texture behind it. So I'm going to follow 3.10 to assign a grunge texture to these, which basically means I'm going to take the object, I'm going to come over here to transparency, and I'm going to apply something as a mask over here. So I'll click on Make Mask, and then I need to place in an object, so I'll go to File, Place, and I'll put in a grunge texture. Say something like that. Oops. Pick one of the concretes here. Something like that. And I'll place that in. It's obviously way too big. Shrink it down a little bit. That should have been on that. Hold on a second. I have to click on this first, sorry, then I'll place. There it is. And let's make this a little bit smaller because it's so gigantic right now. Come on. And let me also adjust that opacity a little bit so it's not quite so stark. And then we'll go back. And so instead of being that stark, I have now a texture that's been applied to it. Again, optional. I'm showing a variety of different strategies for what you might want to do as a way of enhancing these particular regions that I've created. Right? The next thing that you can do, which I'm going to do for the windows because I think it will showcase the best of what this does, is I'm going to apply a sky texture to all of the windows. So let me go back, and I'm going to turn off everything except this original live paint layer that I created. And then I'm going to select all of the blue objects. So I'll click on it. I'm going to say select same fill color. So I have all of those selected. And I want all of those to be on their own layer. So I'll click on create new layer. And I'm going to drag these up to layer 8. This, by the way, is written out under Illustrator. Hold on, I have to double check. Oops, Illustrator, come on. Right here under 3.13 for clipping mask and 3.14 for complex clipping mask. Clipping masks were something that I used to spend at least a whole day or maybe a couple days really emphasizing because it used to be a really good strategy for how collages worked. We've superseded that by doing a lot of Photoshop work after the fact, which we'll explore once we get into SketchUp. So I don't spend as much time dealing with these clipping masks. So if it goes a little bit above what you're comfortable with, stick with just the plain colors to enhance. But I want to at least show you these so that you have some experience. So I'm going to go back here. I have my objects selected. I want them on their own layer. And I'm going to call this window clipping mask. And we'll turn everything off except for just this layer. Okay? So right now I have a bunch of paths that are on that layer that represent all of these individual shapes. I need to make them into one compound path to have this happen. So with them all selected, I'm going to go to Object, Compound Path. If I can find it. There it is. Make, which changes them from individual paths to one path. Okay? Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and find and place an image of sky into the background here. So let me go quick to the internet, and we'll do a search. To the Creative Commons website, and we'll search for sky with Flickr. Right. And we'll get some kind of background image of sky. Something like this looks pretty good. A few clouds on it. I'm going to download this image in its original format. And I'm going to, oops, I thought I was going to. Show in folder so that I can copy it to my flash drive. Copy. Wrong class. Go ahead and paste this. All right, so then I'll jump back into Illustrator, and I'm going to go to File and then Place, and I'll pick that I just downloaded. Right there. I'll go ahead and go to Place. Let me zoom out because this is obviously significantly bigger than I need, and we'll adjust the scale down a bit. All right, now I also want to make sure that this object, the linked file, is below the compound path. So I'm going to drag the order so that I see my windows on top of this object. And then I can keep adjusting it to make it a little bit smaller. Something like that. All right, so now I'll zoom in so you can see this happen. OK, so I have this, and it has to be very specific in this order. I have the main layer, I have the compound path that represents all of my objects, and then I have the link file. If you have anything other than this, it won't work. So it's very, very specific. So I have this set up. I'm going to select the main layer itself, making sure nothing else is selected. The main layer. I'll go to this little flyout menu, and I'll say Make Clipping Mask. And it will then clip based on my objects for just these windows. All right, then I can go through and adjust the transparency of this object. Oops, I have to select it, sorry. I'm going to adjust that transparency down a little bit so they're not quite as strong, maybe something like that. And then we can turn back on my original south elevation layer, and you can see what it looks like with some sky for where the glass would be, which is a good technique for how you do the glass. Okay? And so I could choose to turn on just the glass. I could choose to turn on textures, right? I can do the same technique with actual textures. So if I wanted to say concrete to show up on the buildings, I could do the same clipping mask using one of the objects that's on my layers here. So I could do that. Let me show you that. Let's say I wanted this. Yeah, let's do this object here. I wanted that to show up as concrete. I'll put that on its own layer, and we'll call this concrete wall. And once again, I have two paths on it this time. I have to combine those two paths. They're selected. Let me go to Object, Compound Path, Make, and I get one compound path. Then I need to drop in some kind of a concrete texture of some kind, and go to File, Place, and let me jump back to the internet here for a second, and let's do a search for concrete wall. I'm not sure which one I want to do here. Let's pick something like this. Okay, this is actually a stucco wall, but it'll work fine for my purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and download this image, and we'll show it and copy it to my flash drive. Go ahead and paste this. And then let me jump back to Illustrator. And so once again, right, we can turn off everything. Let me turn off there. So we're back to where we have just the concrete wall layer with the compound path. I'm going to go ahead and go to File and then Place. And I'll drop that image in. I don't know which one it was. This one. Nice. There it is. Once again, I have to make it a little bit smaller. It came in too big. I hold down Shift to keep it in proportion. Something like that. Remember, my path has to be on top of the linked file, like that. And now we can keep going. Something like that. And once again, same strategy here. Once I have them in that order, I'll click on the main layer itself, the concrete wall layer, and I'll say Make Clipping Mask. And it will then clip this object with that texture. Okay? So if I turn back on my south elevation layer, we can see that the texture has been applied to that section of the wall. Okay? So you could choose how much or how little of this is relevant for what you're doing, but this is a very good way of adding a certain artistic element to a regular AutoCAD line drawing. And so there's a process by which you can get fairly good looking end results. And I'll follow this one through and show you what I would do as an end result. So this was, again, more on the artistic side of doing layouts. I want to show you more the technical side of what you would be doing in an office with notes and a title block and that sort of thing. So I'm going to move on to part 4 of the exercise today. Under part 4, I've pre-made some stuff for you. So if I go to exercises to today, and we go to 124, under part 4, I have a zip package of title blocks, bar scales, and notes for InDesign and or Illustrator. So you want to download that, right, which will come down as a zip file. Once you've downloaded it, you'll want to extract it to your flash drive. So I'll right-click on it and say Extract All and choose my flash drive. I've already done it, so I'm not going to actually extract it. And once you have it on your flash drive, then we can come back to Illustrator, and I'm going to turn on my other layers here. We'll go to Control 0. There, so I see everything. Right? Now I'm going to go to File and then Place. Oops, I have to be on a layer So let me create a new layer. I'm going to put this layer on top of everything else. I hope. There it is. And I'm going to call this title block. And I'm also going to go through and lock all the rest of the layers so that I don't accidentally edit those layers. Okay, so I can't select them anymore. So now on the title block layer, I'll go to File and then Place. And I'm going to go to where I extracted those files, which is on my flash drive under my Resources folder. I have a folder called Title Blocks. And we'll see that I have a variety of title blocks that have been pre-made for you. Right? So here under Title Blocks, I have the casual 24 by 36. I'll go ahead and place that in. Crop to media is fine. Go ahead and say OK. And it will then drop in. Okay? And you can see down here that it gave me a little bit of title, name, address, etc. at the bottom. It should have come in as an editable file. I might have to say Edit Original, or I think I can click on Embed. OK, that's fine. So once it's embedded, the lines are now live, and it's under a group. Hold on, I have to see why. It should have been transparent. There it is. So one of these is a JPEG image at the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this overall layer. I'll select everything, and I'm going to change, just like in Photoshop, I'm going to change its blending mode to be multiply, which means that the white goes away and everything else shines through. So once again, I did that under transparency. Right? I selected everything that's on this title block layer. Control A will do that. And then I went to my transparency and changed the blending mode to multiply, which allows the title block to show up, which gives me a drawing title, client name, address, and sheet numbers. Right? This is a very basic title block. An office would likely have more solid information than this that they could drop in. I have a font that I use for a lot of this kind of thing. It's substituted in right now as a very basic font here. The font that I use has a free version. It's called Frank the Architect. And so you can click on this and you can download the free version of this font. Looks like an architect's handwriting. Right? It's a pretty good one. Works well. And so you can go ahead and download this. I also have a direct link to it. There is a paid version that has bold and a few more characters and whatever. The free version will work just fine. If you guys remember back to the typography section when we talked about putting in a custom font, I have that little application still on my flash drive from before. Under Resources, Font Viewer, I can open Font Viewer. There it is. And I can say Not Installed Fonts from my flash drive under Resources, Fonts. There's Frank the Architect. I've already downloaded it there. And I'm going to install it temporarily. Yes. All right, so now we can minimize these. Maybe not. Let me jump back to Illustrator, and lo and behold, it's now. Hold on a second. It's now been substituted in because it's now available on the system. And now let me go ahead and adjust the name. So I'll double click on this, and I'll keep double clicking until I get to the text file there. And then I'm going to rename this. So this is Yosemite Valley Cabin. Maybe I'll make it centered. I could also adjust where this is going. Sorry about that. So it looks reasonable. Client name and address, right? I can put in myself or whatever. So Clearly, I cannot type today. You get the idea. Sheet is not 7 of 7. It would be 1 of 1. So I'll just make those corrections. Right? And so now I have kind of a basic title block that's been put in place. I'll jump back out of my object isolation mode so that I have my overall object. Looks like it moved a little bit. Something like that. There we go. So I have that in. Now maybe I want to put some notes in. I can do the same thing, or maybe a scale. Let me go to File, Place. And I have drawing scale. This would be a 1/4 inch equals a foot. And I have a casual 1/4 inch equals a foot. I'll use that one. Say OK. If we zoom in on this object, you can see what it looks like. Right? Looks like a scale that says 1/4 inch equals a foot. I can put that somewhere on this drawing, depending on where I want it. We can drop it in. I can also go to File and then Place, and I can drop in a drawing note. Place. I'll say OK. And this then, if we zoom in on it, looks like a drawing note. Right? I could point here at a particular wall, and I can keep double-clicking on it until I get in to edit the text. Come on. It's not. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have to click Embed. Take this, Embed, and now I can come in and I could say this is a concrete wall. Something like that. Right? I can also adjust the curvature of this line. If I selected the line itself. All right, come on. Hold on a second. I'm going to go ahead and release the clip group. So let me, because that's part of what the problem is, get out of this. I'm going to right-click on the object and say Ungroup. And now I should be able to select these. Release clipping mask. There we go. And now I can select that arrow. It's nested inside too many clipping masks. Anyway, you can eventually get down to where you can edit the arrow and move that away. So I put the little note in. Right? Maybe I also want to put in my, let's see, scale, drawing note. Yeah, the rest of it's probably fine. Drawing title. Let's put that one in. I'll go ahead and click on Place. And again, this is more of the technical side of things. There we go. Say OK. There it is. Oops. Let me embed the object. And we will edit this object. And so in this particular case, this is the west elevation. Right? I could choose to put in subtext here if I wanted to. I could say this is a 1/4 inch equals 1 foot, or whatever. Right? Let's move this over. Something like that, right? And I end up with kind of this little title bar that would represent that part of the drawing. Once I back my way out of the object isolation mode, right, and now have a nice little text that's established here. And so this is kind of basic layout where you put in title blocks and that sort of thing. If you don't like the stuff that I did, there's no reason that you can't draw your own and put it in. A lot of times that's even easier than placing the objects. This is just done as a kind of a sample idea for how you might lay it out. Does that make sense? Yeah. I know I dumped a lot on you today. The problem with this kind of a lecture is that there's so many variables for what you're trying to do and the overall look of what you're trying to create that I want to show you a variety of techniques, and then you pick and choose which ones are the right techniques to use. Okay? So I'll turn you loose, and if you have questions, we'll sit down and go through them.